In this video, we're going to look at coterminal angles. Okay, so let's analyze this word coterminal right here. Co, meaning together, and terminal. You guys remember in our last video about angles, we looked at the initial side and the terminal side where it ends. So coterminal means they both end in the same place. So let's look at this one. I have my two protractors there. And if I start here on the positive part of the x-axis, that's where my initial side is going to be, and I go around the circle, I'm going to end up at 160 degrees. So the angle measurement that I'm looking at here is 160 degrees. But it turns out there's also an infinite number of other angles that end up in that same place. So if I start here, the same initial side, and I go all the way around the circle past that point and then come back to it, I've ended in the same place even though I went a lot more degrees. I went all the way around the circle one whole time and then I came back and went 160 more. So let's see what that works out to be. I'll just type that in my calculator here. All right, 160 plus 360, 520. So my angle that I've got, 520 degrees and 160 degrees are coterminal. They both end in the same place. It's just that the 160 degrees stops the first time. 520 goes all the way around and stops there the second time. I could go around the unit circle as many times as I want. So what if I wanted to go round and round and round 6 times? You guys could see I had that already typed in the calculator here. 360 times 6 means I'm going to take 6 trips around the circle, and then I'm going to end up at 160. So 2,320 degrees is also coterminal with this particular point. Okay, now in geometry and in the classes where you've used protractors in the past, you've always learned to learn to measure angles in this direction. But what we're going to learn here in trig is that we can also measure angles going in this direction. We can go the opposite way on the circle. And if you think about this way being positive, well, if I go the opposite way, that's going to be negative. So if I have the same initial side, and instead of going counterclockwise, I go clockwise, and I come around the circle this way, I can still end up in that same place. So I'm going to go around the circle 180 degrees, and then I'm going to go 20 more. You can see that 20 right there. I'm going to go 20 more to get to that place. So I went 200 degrees. It's just that I went in a negative direction, and I'm ending in the same place, so they are coterminal. And I can go around the circle as many times as I want to in a clockwise direction as well, right? I can go around the whole circle and then come back around. So if I go all the way around 360 degrees in the negative direction, and then I go 200 more degrees in the negative direction, negative 560 is also in that same place. And there are infinitely many of these. I can just go round and round the unit circle in a clockwise or counterclockwise direction as many times as I want. Okay, let's look at this 160 that you saw in the last one. And we learned in our last video that you can measure angles in degrees, like what you're used to, and you can also measure them in radians. So let's take that 160 degrees and let's change that to radians. Do you remember how to multiply that? Our multiplier to change to radians, I want my 180 degrees to be in the denominator because I need my degrees to cancel out, so it will be unitless. And I'm going to put pi in the numerator. So 160 and 180. Let's see what can go into both of those. I believe they're both divisible by 20. So 20 will go into 168 times. 20 will go into 189 times. 8 and 9 are not going to simplify any further. So my radians that corresponds to this same angle, 8 pi over 9. Now, if I want to find a measure in radians that is coterminal to this one, okay, I'm right here. I went from my initial side over to here, but I didn't have to stop. Just like before, I could have gone all the way around and then come back. So all the way around the circle, we know in degrees is 360 degrees. Let's see what that is in radians. 360 times, I'm going to use that same multiplier of pi over 180 so that my units will cancel out. 180 goes into 360 two times. So 360 degrees corresponds to 2 pi radians. So if I take my 8 pi over 9 right here and I add 2 pi is the same thing as 2 pi over 1. So I'm going to add an entire trip around the circle. All right, let's get a common denominator. I need to multiply the top and the bottom of that second one by 9. 18 pi over 9. 8 pi over 9 plus 18 pi over 9 is 26 pi over 9. So that means that 26 pi over 9 and my original 8 pi over 9 are coterminal. They would both end in that same spot. And just like before, I can go around and around and around the circle as many times as I want. If I go around one more time, that's going to be 44 pi over 9. And I could do infinitely many going around and around and around the circle. Okay, but radians work just like degrees. I can go around the circle the opposite way and just use negative radians. Okay, so let's see what that's going to be. This time, instead of adding 2 pi, I'm going to subtract 2 pi. So if I am here and I go backwards around the circle, I move in a clockwise direction, you guys can see that I'm going to go in a clockwise direction, 2 pi radians all the way around the circle, and I'm going to end up in that same place. So I'm going to start at 8 pi over 9. I'm going to go all the way around, and I'm going to end up in that same place. So I need that same common denominator of 9. So I'm going to make this 18 pi over 9. It's just that this time I'm going to subtract it, negative 10 pi over 9. And I could go around the unit circle again in a backwards direction if I wanted to, negative 28 pi over 9. And I can keep doing that as many times as I want. And I'm going to end up with something that is coterminal to this one. It's going to end up in that same place every time. Okay, let's do one that's a little bit different. Let's do one that starts with a negative. Okay, so if I'm here, that means my initial side was here, and I went this way around the unit circle. I went clockwise to get to here. So what if I go all the way around the unit circle again? So negative 3 pi over 4, subtract 2 pi, which we just said is 2 pi over 1. All right, so my common denominator this time is going to be 4. So negative 3 pi over 4 minus 8 pi over 4. Negative 3 and negative 8, that makes negative 11 pi over 4. So if I go all the way around the unit circle again and end up there, that puts me at negative 11 pi over 4. I can also think about it that if I start here and I go negative 2 pi, I go all the way around, and then I go negative 3 pi over 4 more, I end up in that same place. You can think about it either way. All right, what if I want to go positive? Well, then I will do negative 3 pi over 4 plus 2 pi, which is 2 pi over 1. Just like before, I'm going to need to get that common denominator, negative 3 pi over 4 plus 8 pi over 4, and that puts me at 5 pi over 4. So that means if I started here, 4 pi over 4, that's 180 degrees, that's pi, right? 4 pi over 4 would simplify. The 4's would cancel and I would get pi, which is the same thing as 180 degrees. So if I started here and I went in a counterclockwise positive direction and I ended up here, that would be pi radians or 4 pi over 4, and then I would go one more to get here, which is 5 pi over 4. So again, I can go around the circle either way, and I'm going to end up in the same place. Okay, how about this one? What if I start off with a degree measure? All right, so let's see what happens there. If I am at negative 135 degrees and I go around the unit circle and end up there, well, how many degrees is that? That one's a little bit easier. We're a little bit more accustomed to that one. Negative 135, and then I'm going to go negative 360 more. Negative 495 is going to be in that same place. It's coterminal. It goes all the way around and then comes back that much more. All right, and I could do the same thing for positive. I could say, well, if I'm here and I want to move in a counterclockwise direction, how much does it take me to get there? Well, that's subtracting away this part of the circle from the whole circle. So I'll take 360 and subtract 135. It's the same thing as doing negative 135 plus 360. And I end up with positive 225. So if I start here and I move around the circle 225 degrees in a positive direction, I will end up here. And I could add 360 to that again if I wanted to, just like we did before. So 585 would be coterminal. It would put me in that same spot. All right, how about if we're given one that's not where we expect it to be? That one's not in between 0 and 360. And I want to figure out what it would be if I moved it into the regular circle, in between 0 and 360. All right, so let's clear out what we've got in our calculator here. Let's take 805 and subtract 360. Let's do one less trip around the unit circle. All right, well, I'm at 445, not unit circle, sorry, just the circle. 445. Okay, I'm still not within 0 and 360, so I'll subtract 360 again. I'll go one less trip around the circle, and I get 85. So that means 85 would be about here. That 85 degrees is coterminal to the 805 that I started off with. I just went around the circle fewer trips to get here. I didn't even go around the circle one whole time. All right, how about this one? Negative 1,150. Okay, let's use the same logic. So I'll put in there negative 1,150. And I'm going to add 360, one less trip in the negative direction. All right, negative 790. I'm still not within 0 and negative 360, so I'll do it again. Plus 360. I'm still not there, so I'll do it again. Plus 360, just removing my trips around the circle. Okay, so I'm at negative 70. So think about where that's going to be. If I'm right here on the initial side of my angle, and I go in a clockwise direction, 70 degrees, well, this is 90. So 70 degrees is going to be here. So that is negative 70 degrees. But what if the direction said I needed to do an angle in between positive 0 and 360? Well, I just add 360 one more time. I'm now going to reverse my direction on the unit circle, and I'm going to end up at 290 degrees. Okay, so think about that, 290. If I were going to go 290 degrees, well, there's 90, there's 180, there's 270, and 20 or 30 more to get over here, 20 more to get to that one. I forget what it was. 290. All right, so that's where I would be right there, positive 290 degrees in the same place.